So we have had a new codev update about a update that's going to land on the 19th of December. So we've got loads of warning on this one. So we're going to have a look through it. But before we do, make sure to join the Discord server. We are doing loads of giveaways. We've got battle passes. We've got premium battle passes to give away. We've got meta passes to give away. We've even got a cosmetic for the vending machines, all to give away. So make sure you get in the Discord. I'll put the link down below. Get yourself in those giveaways. Don't cost anything to enter. Just be there. Anyway, let's get into this update. So it develops codev update, major balance adjustments to weapon builds. Dear Metas have been closely following the feedback on the weapon build balance. We want every build to have its moment to shine. So we're planning to balance update. So basically they found out that no one uses bounce build, because bounce build is terrible solo damage, or terrible single target damage, and not top tier mob damage. It still doesn't outperform ice or anything like that. So we understand you invest a lot of time and effort into collecting and upgrading weapons. That's why we'll do our best to avoid nerfs in this balance adjustment, focusing instead on buffs and environmental changes. After the update, we'll also provide extra blueprint conversion attempts. The exact number will be detailed in the update announcement. This balance update includes the following changes, and we'll look forward to your feedback. Please note that these are not all the adjustments or final values. We'll continue to adjust and optimize after testing and gathering new input, and we'll detail all balance changes in future official announcements. So bounce rework. So they're completely reworking the bounce effect because they figured out it's actually trash. So the bounce keyword is getting a rework, enhancing its AoE damage and improving combat experience for bounce builds and single target scenarios. The new bounce effect is as follows. Keyword bounce. After triggering bounce, your shot will randomly bounce to one enemy within 15 meter radius. If no enemy is nearby, it bounces off the environment. It can then bounce one more time, each bounce dealing weapon damage equal to 40% of your attack. So instead of so the way it worked before, if it was a solo target enemy, it'd hit the enemy and bounce, and the bullet would be lost. So now it's going to hit, bounce, jump off a wall, and hit him again. It's pretty cool. But it is going to affect everything else. So the weapon updates, we've got the Brahmini, so it's got 60% chance to trigger bounce on hit. Bounce is +2, deals 50% bounce damage to players. Hitting the environment can also trigger bounce. Damage decreases by 30%, 95% against players. Bounce weak spot priority +50%. The Roaring Bear's got 25% chance to trigger AoE bounce on hit, bouncing up to 3 targets. Bounce hits always trigger a rebound, dealing 100% bounce damage. After rebounding, it doesn't continue to bounce. Bounce damage +30%. When mag capacity is below 50, bounce count +1. And then the Squidward. 70% chance to trigger bounce on crit hits. Each time bounce is triggered, weapon damage +2, stacking up to 25 times. One stack is lost every 5 seconds. After continuous shoot for 2 seconds, bounce targets +1. So there's that. Unique gear. So the Prickly Dance bounce can hit allies without causing damage and automatically reload 1 bullet on hit. Hot Dog Shorts are going to give you +2 bounces, and the Sharp Blade Pants bounce trigger count +1. All the mods have been reworked as well. So the Super Bullet now does bounce crit rate +10%, crit damage +25. Targeted bounce is going to be renamed to Chain Bounce. The more bounces, the higher the damage, up to 45%, 7.5 per bounce. Not throw away your shot. Renamed as Boomerang Bullet. Each time bounce deals damage, its trigger chance +2% based on weapon's trigger chance, lasting 5 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. Then we've got Bounce Rampage. The more selectable targets the bounce has, the higher the bounce damage, up to 45%, 15 per target. Then we've got Break Bounce. When bounce hits an enemy with HP above 50%, final bounce damage +25%, and then Precision Bounce. After triggering bounce 6 times, next bullet's bounce damage is 100%. So just a huge buff altogether to the bounce build. Huge buffs. A few bug fixes with the turrets. Here we are. Trigger and random event optimizations. Random algorithm adjustment. Random effects on gears sometimes fail to trigger repeatedly, which can be frustrating. To address this, we're implementing a new pseudo-random trigger algorithm. When a random effect doesn't trigger, its chance to trigger will increase, reducing the occurrence of extreme cases. So this is for things like when you've got, say, like a 20% chance to trigger Frost Vortex, you can easily go through a clip, and if you're unlucky, you can just go through a whole clip without triggering it at all. So this is going to make it so that each time you don't trigger, it's going to get a little more likely, basically give you like a pity roll, which is pretty cool. Weapon adjustments. Some weapons' combat experience and stability are heavily affected by trigger conditions, so we've made the following changes. Silent Egress. Ice crystals now trigger directly on weapon hit. The target no longer needs to be in Frost Vortex status. Meanwhile, increase the trigger chance of Frost Vortex. For the Boom Boom, Explosion now triggers directly on weapon hit. Little Jaws, Unstable Bomber now triggers directly on weapon hit. Abyss Glance, reduce the number of hits required to trigger Frost Vortex to 15. So it was 20, so that's not too bad. The Gold Law, Unstable Bomber now has a low chance to trigger on normal hits and a high chance on weak spot. Hammerhead, Power Surge is now low chance to trigger on normal hits, high on weak spot. And the Dusty, same with the Shrapnel. Made some optimizations to adjust the difficulty in acquiring calibration blueprints. We plan to implement the following changes on December 19th. Adjusting acquisition methods for regular and seasonal calibration blueprints. Dropped weapons will always carry general calibration blueprints, e.g. rapid, heavy. Refined calibration blueprints obtained from defeating super anomalies will always be seasonal calibration blueprints, overflow, energy, etc. And they've adjusted weapon drop rates in dungeons, reduced the proportion of melee weapons among dropped from 30 to 10%. Thank God there was nothing worse than you keep getting melee weapons. When nobody wants melee weapon, adjust calibrations. Adjust calibrations drop rates from super anomalies, so level 40 up to 25, 50 up to 50, 60 up to 50. Seasonal calibration blueprint effects adjustments. After reloading from empty, the next shot is guaranteed to trigger its keyword, final damage minus 10%. They're changing that to just triggering. They're not they're taking off the damage nerf, which is actually going to be really good for a lot of weapons. It's going to be actually usable now. And then the energy after being shot automatically one reloadability attack 15. After taking damage, automatically reloadability. So that's just a damage change. So you don't have to actually be shot, it's any type of damage, that's good. Full adjustment. We also plan to adjust other combat stats. Below is the full list of planned updates and specific numerical adjustments, keyword adjustments. So the burn, instead of base damage plus 10%, burn's going to base damage plus 12%, which is pretty good. Frost Vortex, they're reducing the trigger delay time for the Frost Vortex damage, which is good, because you'd prop the Frost Vortex, and then you'd have to wait a second for like it to start ticking, which was really annoying. Again, bounce, random bounces to one enemy within 10 meters, dealing weapon damage equals 6%. After triggering the bounce, your shot will randomly bounce to one enemy within 15 meters radius. If no enemy nearby bounce off environment, it can then bounce one more time, 40% of your attack. So it's a wider radius and the ability to bounce off walls, which is good. So changes. So Memento's changing from 36% chance to trigger fast gunner on hit to 45% and 80 on weak spot. On one fast gunner is triggered, automatically reload one bullet. Same. Each shot has a 40% chance to consume one extra bullet. When consuming extra bullets, attack plus 80 is now going down to a 60% chance, but the attack is only plus 60. So that's a bit of a change. Raining Cash, no one uses, don't care. Inferno Starter, trigger to burn on hits, the same, that's the same. So when reloading in charge state, ammo is replaced with Dragon's Breath rounds, in 85% going up to 95%. Reloading can choose all charges, increase the blade damage to 10%, changing to 20%, extra 8 for 4 stacks instead of extra 10. The Kumawink is 25% chance bounce. Yeah, again, it's just a bounce buff. The Little Jaws, trigger unstable one after 15 hits. Unstable one is guaranteed to trigger on hit. So instead of having to have the 15 hits, it's going to hit on the first one and with just under a 1 second cooldown. That's a big change. Delay increased 0.3, that's 0.2 seconds, so they're making it less. Each hit on enemy with unstable bonnet increases that unstable ball's final damage by 10%, doubled when hitting weak spots. That's gone to 20%. That's fine. Abyssal Glance. So this is one of the ones I use. So it triggers Frost Vortex after 20 hits. That's going down to 15 hits now. Weak spot counts as 2, close to Vortex, strongest. That's all. It's just changing that amount. Silent Egress. 10% chance to trigger Frost Vortex on hit. Hitting targets, Frost Vortex generates ice crystals. Ice crystals shatter after. Silent Egress. Is that the... That's not what the actual weapon's called, is it? That's not what the actual weapon's called. I'm sure they're talking about Silent Anabasis. not the silent egress. I don't think there's a weapon called silent egress. Yeah, I'm sure they're talking about the silent Anabasis. Lost in translation somewhere, obviously. So it's gone from a 10% chance to trigger Frost Vortex up to a 15% chance. Hitting targets with Frost Vortex generates ice crystals. From now on, it just generates ice crystals. They don't have to be in the vortex. Ice crystals shatter after 15 seconds, dealing frost damage equals 100% psi intensity nearby. Their shatter early damage increases to 300%. Now going to 350%. That's really good. And frost elemental damage plus 30. Each additional one grants 8, stacking 3 times. So that's just a huge buff. The Brahmini, we covered it already. That's a bounce. The Boom Boom, we covered already. The Last Valor, optimize the counter logic. After 3 hits, the 4th crit hit triggers shrapnel, but the counter doesn't reset to 0. It starts counting from 1. That's pretty cool. So the conflicting memories. So this is what I'm using at the moment. So trigger shrapnel after 12 hits. That's the same. For every 40 bullets in the magazine, shrapnel trigger part gain +1 up to 4. That's the same. When magazine exceeds 100 bullets, every extra 15 increases shrapnel damage by 8. When magazine exceeds 90 bullets, every 15 bullets increases shrapnel damage by 10. Oh, okay. So that's a straight buff as well. And considering how good this weapon is already, that's a hell of a buff. The Dusty we covered, Hammerhead we've covered, the video. Like if you want to see any of these, like these are the less used weapons. Armor adjustments. So the Covert Walker, Frost Vortex collapses the center and keeps pulling enemies in. Frost Vortex collapses the center, keep pulling. So it's just a wider range on that. Snow Camo Gloves. That's what I'm using. When the ice crystals shatter, 4 additional ice missiles will launch at nearby enemies, dealing Frost Vortex damage 40% psi intensity. Targets hit. They just upped it to 50%, from 40 to 50. So again, just straight damage buff. Gas Mask. Shrapnel can hit a maximum of 1 part. Base shrapnel damage plus 10. That's not what it is. It's a +1 shrapnel hit. So it's not can hit a maximum of 1 part, it can hit an extra part. But it's going from 100 to 150 base damage. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. When fast guns triggered, 50% chance to reload a bullet, 65% chance to reload a bullet, and 20 attack. Because no one's using fast gunner either, really. Rick Klein's done that. Hot Dog, no. Bastile's got a huge change. Bastille set. So when HP is above 70, weapon damage plus 10%, reload speed plus 20. Stay crouched and immobile for 0.5 seconds to enter Bastille state. While in the Bastille state, gain weapon damage plus 40%. After exiting Bastille state, you cannot sprint, and your stamina consumption is increased by 100% for 3 seconds. 3 seconds after exiting Bastille state, gain 1 stack of armor per second, stacking up to 60 times. Upon entering the Bastille state, each stack of armor provides shield equal to 1% of max HP. If the shield is reduced to 0, gain vulnerability plus 30%. That's the old one. They've completely changed it now. So you've still got the HP above 70, weapon damage plus 10. But instead of reload, they're going with max HP plus 20. Instead of this bit, after being out of combat for 10 seconds, enter Bastille state, gaining a shield equal to 50% of max HP. If the shield breaks, exit Bastille state and gain 20% damage reduction and 20% movement speed for 1 second. So they've completely changed the Bastille set, apart from the first one. That first perk's the same, but everything else, they've completely changing the Bastille set. Mod adjustments. Most of these were covered earlier. It's mostly the bounce ones. Shrapnel Smash. Okay, triggering shrapnel grants shrapnel crit rate plus 1% for 2 seconds, stacking up to 20. Triggering shrapnel grants shrapnel crit rate plus 2% for 2 seconds. Effect can stack up to 15 times. Oh, okay. So they're just straight up doubling it, but capping it at 15. So instead of 1% 20 times, you're getting 2% 15 times. Oh, that's going to affect the Last Valor a lot. That's going to make the Last Valor an absolute crit machine. That's kind of crazy, actually. That means you can focus more on crit damage. That's great. Dribble territory, retrusion, explosion, gunslinger, precision bounce, break bounce, heavy explosive, delayed blast, lingering frost. The longer duration of frost vortex, the higher the final damage, up to 60. Rename to frost construct. Frost constructs, ice spikes, ice missiles, ice crystals deal plus 10 damage. If the target's in frost vortex status, deal an extra 10% damage. Okay, so they realized no one was using lingering frost because trying to get the mods to lengthen the duration was such a pain, so no one used it. So they're basically changing it to the frost construct instead. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. The calibration change we've seen. Deviation Mitsuko, optimize the weak spot vulnerability mechanics. Cool. Cradle adjustment, the bounce rampage after landing bounce shot, bounce damage plus 10 is changing to after landing bounce shot, bounce damage plus 5 for 15 up to 5 stacks. So there we go. You can check all this out for yourself if you want to go through all of them. I've just gone through like the main ones that people use. But yeah, what do you think about the update? That's a lot of buffs to a lot of weapons and a lot of builds. I wonder if people are going to start using bounce now. Anyway, thank you for that. I'll see you all soon. Bye.